Demo, No Side Effects, Exploring Homeopathy with Dr. Ken Silvestri, TRT 25 minutes, podcast TRT 45 minutes. Hello, I'm Natasha Rabin, the executive producer of No Side Effects, Exploring Homeopathy, hosted by Dr. Ken Silvestri. Dr. Silvestri was awarded his doctorate in anthropology and psychology from Columbia University and is a certified classical homeopath. Today we'll be talking about homeopathy relative to Dr. Ken's personal discovery of it and the role that homeopathy plays in today's health world with our very special guest, Amy Lansky. Future segments of No Side Effects will explore many of its applications to physical, emotional, and medical issues with professionals and those who have used homeopathy successfully. Although this show discusses different treatment modalities, including narratives using various remedies, it is intended only as a general introduction to homeopathy. The information shared is not intended to replace any medical diagnosis. Dr. Silvestri is not a medical doctor, and information about homeopathy shared by him is for educational purposes. If one chooses to seek homeopathic care, it should be done under the supervision of a licensed physician and a certified homeopath.
Thank you, Natasha. I'm really glad to be hosting No Side Effects, a weekly gathering of ideas and discussions based on the extraordinary healing potential of homeopathy.
You're welcome, Dr. Ken, and I'm pleased to be part of No Side Effects. There's a great lineup of guests who are going to share their expertise. Some of the topics we'll be covering are emotional issues, including anxiety, depression, grief, stress, developmental areas such as autism, ADD, ADHD, and of course we'll discuss both acute and chronic physical challenges that affect adults, kids, even pets, or provide assistance in dealing with the side effects of traditional medicine like chemotherapy. Dr. Ken, let me start off by asking, given your professional background as a therapist, how did you segue into becoming a homeopath?
Well, for the past 30 years, Natasha, I've had a practice as a psychotherapist, and for almost 20 years have been one of a small number of psychotherapists to integrate homeopathy within my practice. While in the doctoral program at Columbia University, I was lucky to have had the opportunity to study with giants in their fields, such as Margaret Mead and Gregory Bateson. Both disciplines, anthropology and psychology, served me well as a family therapist, but it was the experience of one of my children suffering from extreme gastrointestinal problems and dealing with side effects of the massive amounts of steroids that caused me to seek out homeopathy as an alternative to traditional medicine.
That must have had a profound effect on your life.
Well, it surely did. It literally changed both the life of my child and my future professional path. I've always been a firm believer in mind-body connections, having witnessed over and over how emotional stress contributes to the occurrence of illness. So I thought the counsel of a homeopath. When I arrived at Dr. Luke Giuseppe's office, he immediately said, "Hey, Dad, you wait here. I'm going to take a walk with your daughter." I knew by his demeanor that he was kind and trustworthy. After an hour, with his nurse assuring me that the assessment may take a while, he returned and handed me a bottle that looked like plain water, which it was, but as he said, with some magic energy. After reading about the remedy he gave us, I realized how accurate his assessment was, that it represented what my daughter was experiencing emotionally and physically. Within a short time, her symptoms disappeared, and she was able to go through her young developmental stages in good health. Over a 6-year period, I proceeded to study with Dr. Luke and other renowned homeopaths and became a certified classical homeopath myself in 1997.
I've read that you were also practicing the Japanese martial art Aikido during that time, that actually you have a black belt. Would you share how that practice contributed to your professional development?
Well, yes, I'm a first dan in Aikido, which is a very effective martial art, so please don't mess with me. You know, it's a martial art that, believe it or not, is based on peace and harmony, and is taught and practiced in a very collaborative atmosphere with the objective to enlighten the world by resolving conflict. In fact, my sensei, Greg O'Connor, always says that in Aikido, we dance in a flash and flow of win-win energy. And this, to me, is a metaphor for psychotherapy and homeopathy in action.
Could you provide some insight then into how you bring your experience as a psychotherapist and a homeopath together?
Well, first of all, homeopathy is a mindful process. This means that it's based on the unique needs of each individual and their presenting psychological temperament, their context of their life. I was recently asked, for instance, to present a webinar on mindfulness and homeopathy for the National Center for Homeopathy. It's on my website. In that webinar, I discuss how mindfulness is having a beginner's mind. It's something to pause and focus while viewing the world as being interconnected. See, if you don't do this, this can lead to all kinds of emotional stress and put our nervous system into a very fight or flight pattern, which have been linked to compromise immune systems and all kinds of other health threats. Homeopathy addresses this directly. In fact, according to the World Health Organization, it is the second most used form of healing in the world, right after Chinese herbal medicine.
As some of you listening may know, the German physician Samuel Hahnemann founded and named the discipline of homeopathy. I understand that before he did, he actually gave up medicine because he felt it often caused more harm than good. Could you tell us some more about Hahnemann?
Well, he was a Renaissance man in the late 18th century, very much ahead of his time, and he understood germ theory, mind-body connections. In fact, he coined the word allopathic, which describes what is still contemporary Western medicine's dependency on large doses of prescribed drugs. He had, like Ivan Illich, the great Jesuit thinker, years later, described as ideogenic of a physician and drug-caused illnesses. Homeopathy's main motivation was to cause the least amount of harm and to get at the root of illnesses rather than maintain or manage symptoms.
So Hahnemann actually saw the problem that still exists today of medicating to suppress symptoms?
Yes, conversely, homeopathy treats acute and chronic ailments in a safe, non-toxic manner and provides an alternative, in many cases, to traditional medicine with no side effects. In a recent book by Dr. Stephen Goldsmith called The Healing Paradox, he cites that 225,000 deaths annually from adverse effects of medical care. That is 9% of the total U.S. deaths, and 106,000 of these are from inherent properties of the medications. Homeopathy is an alternative to this pattern. It is part of conventional medicine in Europe, Canada, South America, Mexico, and South Asia. In fact, there was once hundreds of homeopathic hospitals in the U.S., and it was used extensively in psychiatric hospitals throughout the first half of the 20th century. Currently, at this time in the U.S., there are approximately 1,500 remedies that are approved by the FDA. 11 U.S. presidents were treated solely by homeopathic physicians, and there are many prominent entertainers, athletes.
Paul McCartney.
That's right, Paul McCartney, and they're all well-informed individuals who use it. Dana Ullman's book, The Homeopathic Revolution, provides a list of famous people who have been treated successfully with homeopathy.
Dr. Ken, let's go to the listener question now about how to use homeopathy effectively. Listeners to know side effects are welcome to send questions directly to Dr. Ken at drkennesilvestri.com for subsequent podcasts. Today's question is from Stuart Lewis in Mexico City. Dr. Ken, I work out on a regular basis, but inevitably feel sore afterwards and on occasion have injured myself. I've heard about arnica. What's the best way to use it?
That's a great question, Stuart. Many people, like yourself, have heard of arnica, which is basically a mountain daisy. In its full strength, it will give you bruises, and yet in its homeopathic dilution, will heal contusions and muscle pain. John Wayne, for instance, was fond of mentioning arnica in some of his movies. After socking a bad guy, he'd actually say, "Better get some arnica for that cowboy." Obviously, if you have injured yourself with a sharp blow or a fall, it would help to alleviate the pain and accelerate healing by taking arnica immediately. A 30C potency of 3 to 5 pellets can be taken every half an hour or so for 2 hours, and then every hour up to maybe 3 hours more. Always stopping, by the way, if you feel better. My preference is to dissolve 3 to 5 pellets in approximately 4 ounces of spring or filtered water using an empty bottle. Before taking it, I hit the bottom of the bottle 8 times. That's called succussing it, that activates it. And you take approximately a tablespoon in the same frequency as the dry pellets. Another way of using arnica is for prevention. I take a dose prior to my keto classes and immediately after, especially if we've been thrown around or we're doing high falls, which is when you are flipped over completely. Many of my keto partners use arnica as I do, but also other remedies like cantharis for mat burns and ruta for strained ligaments. Yes, Aikido is a peaceful martial art based on harmony.
I understand homeopathy is based on the law of similars. Would you elaborate how that works?
Well, the remedy I just discussed, arnica, for instance, is a good example of how this homeopathic process works. It's based on the premise of like cures like. All remedies are derived from plants, minerals, and animals, but they're highly diluted to not cause any toxicity. This process is criticized by those who do not believe that highly diluted substances can have any effect. However, many years of clinical success and recent research is indicating that each substance's molecular imprint remains after dilution, and it is this essence that stimulates the immune system to heal itself. All remedies are proven, by the way, by giving it to healthy people over a period of time in controlled clinical settings where symptoms are elicited and recorded. The resulting remedy profiles become the source of prescribing and matching the symptoms to be cured.
Dr. Ken, would you share some cases indicating how your homeopathic remedy assessments have assisted individuals you've counseled?
Well, I have many. Let's see. I recently treated a fellow who had intense migraines for many years. He had been to several neurologists with no success. I interviewed him for my usual intake of 90 minutes. I realized that his core issues revolved around being bullied as a child and how it had carried over to his adult life. Now, there are over 50 homeopathic remedies that can be applicable to migraines. Yet the remedy that brought him relief was one that matched the gestalt of his whole picture of his presenting temperament, his symptoms, and modalities of what made him feel better or worse. After 8 years of pain, he was able to get relief from the remedy. Let's see, another case that I recently had also was a woman in her 40s who came to see me because of depression, anxiety, and anger. She had been to several therapists with little change. I noticed that when she came in, she had a painful sty, and right below her right eye. I used the genogram to do my assessment. Genogram is a psychological family tree to gain some insight into her history. I realized that her presenting problem was based on her husband leaving her for another woman. What seemed like a recent occurrence turned out to be something that happened 15 years earlier, and she still continued to harbor indignation and resentment. The remedy that came up was based on this pattern, a pattern of indignation, and within a month of taking the remedy, she articulated a need to move on. Interestingly, her sty disappeared, which I later found was indicated as part of the remedy that was selected. Interesting how these remedies represent the totality of a person's current status.
Thanks, Dr. Ken. And now let's segue to today's interview with our special guest, Amy Lansky, who's joining us on Skype from the Bay Area. Amy received a doctorate in computer science from Stanford University. After many years at research institutions including NASA and several teaching at Stanford, she left the field to pursue homeopathic medicine. Her first book, Impossible Cure: The Promise of Homeopathy, is one of the best-selling introductory books on homeopathic medicine and is used in educational programs throughout the world. Amy's most recent book, Active Consciousness: Awakening the Power Within, is one of the most exciting, far-ranging, and accessible books available on the evolution of human consciousness.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Hello there, Amy. It's Ken over here. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, not only because you are one of my favorite people, but how I always appreciate and enjoy hearing about your work with homeopathy and higher levels of consciousness. And by the way, a very happy birthday to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm in the midst of my week of celebrating my 60th birthday.
Well, it's
So,
great. I
uh,
usually celebrate all month, so keep the celebration going.
very excited to
for
be
you.
here, Ken.
Great. Thank you for being here. Amy, I want to start off by just asking you, could you share from your personal experience how you found homeopathy to be effective?
Well, as your listeners might wonder, how did this woman go from computer science to homeopathy? Because what a drastic transition. And the real reason is because, in a way, my most amazing homeopathic experience was my first one, which was when my son, Max, was cured of autism with homeopathy. And then I wrote an article about my son, and then I was just really kind of called to write Impossible Cure, which is I just was shocked that people don't know about it, right? So it's a general introduction to homeopathy, but it has a lot of stories from people around the world about their experience. So, and a whole chapter about what happened with our family and all of us, because it's our primary form of medicine.
It's an excellent book, and I use it all the time, and I have multiple copies that I share with my patients, and the feedback is just always wonderful. In both your excellent books, not only The Impossible Cure, but Active Consciousness, you discuss how symptoms in acute cases are signs that our defense system is working. And now, what happens when we don't respect the body's natural process to heal itself and revert to like these knee-jerk reactions of traditional medicine and dealing with side effects? What can we expect the consequences to be? You mentioned in Chapter 7 of The Impossible Cure that homeopathy is a proven medical modality, as we were just saying, yet skeptics are bent on disparaging it. I was wondering if you could just comment on this and how you see homeopathy's role in our health system, especially in regards to not only chronic illnesses, but also against these, or with the skeptics, constantly disparaging it, putting it down.
Yeah, I mean, that is the skeptics I'm very familiar with. I'm certainly on their radar because I've been an advocate for homeopathy to the general public. Well, the point unfortunately, there are these skeptic organizations, and there's proof that they are, some of them, or the biggest ones, are funded by the pharmaceutical industry.
Right.
So really, it's really once again about monopoly and money. But the skeptics, they always say these things that are just simply untrue, like that there's no clinical evidence, there's no studies, when in fact there's plenty, and there's always more going on. And I would say there's hundreds of clinical studies of homeopathy, but most of them done in Europe and in India. So I would say your average doctor is like not aware of this. But because the media and the skeptics who feed the media are always touting this line, there's no proof, it's just
people
just
get
a lie that keeps being
right.
repeated.
People catch on to that. I'm starting to notice that even physicians. I just recently gave a talk to third-year residents in a medical school at their request about homeopathy, and a lot of their frustrations about being told that they only have 11 minutes per patient and that they have to connect with different pharmaceutical companies. And again, it's homeopathy's always been under attack, but I think the more we talk about it, the more we get the word out. And some of the guests we're going to have in the future here on the show are going to be basically people who are doing research, and that's the way to do it. Last question I wanted to ask you again. From your wonderful book, there's a chapter titled "Cure is Possible," where you weave together many stories, as you mentioned before, taken collectively, that produces kind of a living consensus, so to speak, of the amazing potential and possibilities that our species can experience regarding healing. As a psychologist and a homeopath, I've seen many such incidences of like cures like, using narratives and parables that match one's presenting sensations. But I just want to know if you want to share, what stories have impressed you the most, and how have they affected your sense of human consciousness and potential?
Well, I mean, I've heard so many stories over the years, and I was thinking about this actually. Well, obviously, the most amazing story was the cure of my son, because it radically shifted my life and life of my whole family,
Right.
my husband, all of us. But just little things. Even like I'll say to my husband, "I can't believe this. I can't believe this
Right.
happened." So I'll give you a couple examples. Um, once my dog, we were about to go away, like for like a month, and I had a house sitter who was coming in to take care of my dog, and about 3 days before, I noticed this lesion on her paw, and I said, "What is this thing?" It was like a giant, like a tumor like thing, and so I took her to the vet. This was several years ago, and he looked at it and he goes, "Oh, I think it's cancer, has to be removed, but it's in this part of the paw that's like difficult, so there she'd have to wear a cone and this." And I was like, "There's no way, we're like leaving the country in like 2 days from that point." So I said, "Well, I knew what her constitutional remedy was, the remedy that just treated her in general." And so I said, "I'm just gonna like just give her tons of this remedy." So in one day, I gave her like several potencies, like 30 to 101 just plied her with this remedy, and I could, by the time we left, I could already see there was a change, and I had the person who was staying at the house watch this, and she even took pictures, and within a week, it had healed completely, and the fur grown back.
That's an amazing story. I mean, I've heard so many stories, and even in my own experience where I had a dog that responded to homeopathy, it was much more than a placebo.
Yeah,
and also,
so much for placebo effect.
we are reaching the end of our time right now, and I want to thank you so much again. But Amy, could you share with everyone your websites and how they can contact you?
Well, I have two websites, one for each of my books. So that my homeopathy book, the website is impossiblecure.com. And on that site is a lot of content and direction too for autism patients. There's also a Cure Stories database where people contribute their experience, and my radio show, lots of stuff. And then and if you want to email me, the best way is Lansky, which is LANSKY @impossiblecure.com.
Great. And I want to remind everyone to sign up for your always, for me, welcome informative newsletter, which is full of hope and sound advice. And I look forward to getting it and read it whenever it comes. And it's always full of good information. Well, Amy, again, I sincerely appreciate you joining us and sharing your thoughts. I wish you again a happy birthday month and celebrate every moment. And I look forward to, talking with you again in the future.
Oh, thank you.
You
Bye-bye.
take care now. I hope that you enjoyed this informative interview, and to find out about additional segments of No Side Effects, go to nosideffects.net. Let me remind you, although this show discusses different treatment modalities, including narratives using various remedies, it is intended only as a general introduction to homeopathy. The information shared is not intended to replace any medical diagnosis. I am not a medical doctor, and information about homeopathy shared by me is for educational purposes. If one chooses to seek homeopathic care, it should be done under the supervision of a licensed physician and a certified homeopath. Please feel free to contact me with any questions at drkennethsilvestri@gmail.com. To learn more about how I integrate psychotherapy and homeopathy in my practice, go to my website, drkennethsilvestri.com. While my offices are in New York and New Jersey, I see people virtually as well. Thanks to Anthony Gethers, our technical producer, and again to Natasha. Thank you. Tune in again to No Side Effects.